Okay. So this is our podcast, Coexist, where we wanted to start talking to creatives about their art and bringing people together on different perspectives, cultures, religions, aspects of life, viewpoints. So today we have Tim Kreis, our longtime friend that we grew up with. And my co-host Ashe is with us. So Tim, you want to give us a little background on yourself and your art?
Sure. Well, I play saxophone. That's my main thing. I write a lot. I compose. I write songs. Pretty much that all started when I was very young. I had a piano in my room, like a little keyboard. That was just kind of part of my growing up setup. And so I would always write these like little ditties growing up. None of them were worth really anything long term, but it was, I think, just the act of, I was sort of enamored by what music is and what it does. Yeah, that's kind of, I grew up in a very musical home. You guys know my mom. She was a band director. And my dad loved music, loved listening to it. He didn't play himself, but my mom's whole side plays music, and my brother and I have gone on to both be professional musicians. So that was kind of what growing up was like. I went to college for music. I got a bachelor's and master's degree in jazz studies, and
Wow.
yeah, since then I've moved back to Los Angeles and just trying to slug it out in the scene here. So that's it about me. I'm in a variety of projects, kind of ranging all styles. That's kind of been something that I've kind of made a point to do, to understand, not just on a superficial level, a lot of different kinds of music in my lifetime. And so the projects I'm in reflect that in a lot of ways.
Okay. Yeah. You said that you, I guess, focused on jazz. So I just want to know, what was the main impact of that and why that was your main focus?
Well, okay. So there's, not to get too critical of the academic system, but there's not a lot of room for study of things that are not in the Western classical canon. If you go to school for music in the United States, you are studying pretty much classical music or jazz. Not that there aren't other smaller niche programs that do things outside of those two categories, but they're few and far between, and from what I can tell. And so I guess for me, you asked why jazz. Classical music is very focused on, here's the piece, play it this way. And I think that's a fantastic study. It's a great way to learn how to play your instrument. But I love improvisation. I love spontaneity. I love going on a bandstand and not really knowing what's going to happen, but everybody's together in it, and there's an element of that in classical performance, don't get me wrong, but it's not to the same degree. How about that? That's a good way to say that, I think. So that's why jazz sort of fit my creative aesthetic better than classical music would have.
Okay, that makes sense. Ashe, I don't want to take up all questions, so I know you had questions.
Oh, I wanted to know how long you were in LA for.
So I did my undergrad down here, actually. Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I had
so
no
right
idea.
Out of high school, I moved down to LA. I got my bachelor's at Cal State Northridge. I moved to Indiana for 2 years to get my master's, and then I just came back to Northridge because all my people are here.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wanted also to know, what advice would you give to young creatives out there who are trying to do their thing in 2020? Yeah, so I guess sure. For present day, with everything going on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would just say, on a very general basis, don't try to go against the sort of grain of the industry itself. It's not that people can be independent, people can do their thing and be very successful now, and that's awesome. What I'm talking about more is, for example, a lot of people don't like Spotify. A lot of people are very against how little they pay the artists for, you know, a streaming of their song. Personally, I know people that are actually making like a salary streaming songs on Spotify. And so I would say to a young artist, look at people like that. Look at the individuals that are making a, you know, middle class income streaming songs, rather than those that are just so adamantly opposed to the concept to begin with, because Spotify is not going away. The streaming thing, it's not going anywhere. Record sales are a thing of the past, and I think just being open to the fact that the industry has changed and trying to adapt yourself and what you do to that is probably key, especially for 2020. And as things go, you know, live performance in California is going to be done for probably the rest of this year, if not longer. You know, so streaming gives us a wonderful opportunity to make money while not having to go outside and, you know, risk getting a very terrible disease. So I guess that's what I would say. You know, embrace Spotify, embrace the electronic element, the internet element that has, you know, infiltrated the music industry.
Okay. Wow.
Wow.
I guess that makes me want to know, if someone's just starting off, how do they promote themselves on Spotify or utilize those networks?
So granted, I'm not one of these guys making, you know,
Okay.
a bunch of money off Spotify. So this is all secondhand knowledge, what I can give you from my buddies. But pretty much these. So my old roommate from back in my college days, he pretty much started on his own. He just started making songs in his bedroom. A buddy of his, it was involved in like managerial law and stuff like that. So he got a manager from a buddy of his. Then they started pitching these things to people, to curators of Spotify playlists. Like I think of it like radio show hosts, really. It's like these guys run a playlist of tunes that you can stream whenever you want. But in order to get your song into their playlist, you got to pitch it to them. So that's kind of, it's like a radio show. You know, you send your song in and they, you know, take it in for consideration. So that's one way to do it. There's websites now that like I think it was called Submit Hub. So you submit your song and there's a variety of people on there that you pay them $1 to listen to your song, and then they get to put it in their playlist or not. You know what I mean? Like it's, to me, that's a pretty good idea. It's like, oh, so they're getting paid to listen to this, and I have the potential of getting more followers and more streams if they like it. I think it's a pretty cool concept.
That's cool. It's like a new way.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, right. I mean, well, like with anything, I mean, that's kind of the capitalist spirit, right? When things change, someone finds some way to make money off of it somehow, you know, like it. And so, yeah, things like that kind of pop up all around this stuff, which is cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Like that makes me want to like investigate more kind of what I'm probably missing this year.
So I guess that's because that was, I mean, even going through school, especially, you know, like I said, there's two avenues you can take in music school, right? In both of them, professors are so opposed to Spotify, and because they're so closed off to the idea of it, young students kind of get thrust into this environment kind of having either negative opinions or just no concept of how to work this, how to do this. So I think that's a pretty big fallacy. So that's what I would say, like, going back to the young creative thing. There's such a disparity between professors now and the reality of, you know, music and how to make money in this world.
Yeah. Do you think that being a creative, maybe that also wants to be a professional, do you feel like they need to go to school, or could they just learn on their own?
Absolutely, you can learn on your own. Not that I learned a great many things from going to school, but I can't tell you how many people I went to school with that you could just see it. It's like, this is miserable for you. You don't. People were there because they love music, not because they wanted a degree, and that, because you see, those are two different things, right? Like, I love music, but I also wanted a degree. That means I had to go and I had to love my GEs, because if I didn't love my GEs, I wasn't going to do well in my GEs. You know what I mean? And I had to take these courses that weren't necessarily directly related to what I loved and wanted to study, but I wanted the degree. So kind of, it's two different things. It's like what you love and what's emotionally fulfilling to you, and then the practical, the actuality of the situation, which is, you know, you have to do these things to get this piece of paper. And I don't think the paper is necessary to be creative. For me, it's entirely a what's the word? It's insurance for me, because you know, now I have the capacity to teach at a junior college pretty much full time if I wanted to. I have recommendations from some of the top jazz artists in the country, so that, you know what I mean, like, and I wouldn't have gotten it had I not gone through university.
Right. Yeah. So it's like another network or opportunity for you.
Absolutely. And see, networking is a big thing. I wouldn't know the people I know. I wouldn't have gotten the jobs I've gotten had I not gone to school and met these people. So, you know, it's kind of in some ways a catch-22. But the fact of the matter is, no, you can be a musician and not go to school. Some of the greatest artists ever didn't go to school, you know.
Right. Yeah. No, I think like for us, like school was definitely, at least for me and like a lot of people I know, was seen as like, this is what you do. You go to school, you get your degree. And I know a lot of people that just feel like school's not for them. And it's just, you got to figure it out. So I want to know for you, like, what does it mean to be a creative and to have that love for music?
What does that mean? You mean like in relation to school, or?
No, just in general, just for you.
Sure. What does it mean? I think music has always played a vital role in culture, no matter what culture you're a part of or where you hail from. It's a part of connecting to other individuals that are in your immediate environment. So, and this is one of the things that's killing me, not being able to perform live, because that's it. Recording music is great, but it's being in a room, in a social situation with other human beings and expressing myself in an attempt to get them to express themselves, whether it be through dance, whether it be through conversation, whether it be through quiet listening. And, you know, people react to music in such a variety of wonderful ways that is what it's about. It's about creating something that allows people to be themselves, whatever that is for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like I said,
my first time hearing that. Wow.
Say that again.
That's my first time hearing that, how music lets you be yourself, you know, because there's so much you could choose from too. It's like an open market. Wow.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, maybe this is my interpretation, but it sounds like you do music to inspire others to also.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, because at least in my point of view, music plays such a vital role in society that you have to inspire others, because that's the point of it. If you're not inspiring others, then, well, what are you doing? I mean, even for some artists, like you know, for example, people always cite Miles Davis as being this very closed off sort of individual that didn't really care about the audience at all, right? You know, like there's always that image of him playing with his back to the audience so much, so, you know. But even for him, the music was about inspiring people, and it was to the point where it was like, for him, it didn't matter who got inspired so much as that someone did get inspired, if that makes sense. And the same thing for even the free jazz movement and all these things that maybe people aren't super hip to or don't want to listen to because they're a little too edgy. The intent is still there to connect and to make a difference. I think, anyway, when I listen to that music, that's what I hear. And of course, jazz has its own history and lineage, and there's a variety of political things, or even social justice things that are in relation to that genre. But that aside, I still think the base concept of all music is to connect with people.
Yeah. I know, like, for us, like, we initially started this podcast, we started talking more to Black creatives just because that's what was in our pool house. And you talking about like Miles Davis and other jazz artists, it sometimes like I feel like for me, like the music was the main thing. And then for some people, the image of what the musician looks like is a bigger part of what or who they listen to. So I think like for me, like him having his back to the audience is like listen to what I'm playing and what I'm saying.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
And I don't know for you if you feel like image is a big deal, or your viewpoint on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at some of the greatest performers of all time. I mean, I guess a few to come to mind for me anyway would be like Otis Redding, Aretha Franklin, Gladys Knight, Elton John, Freddie Mercury, like, and all these guys.
Wow.
Like, just think about how every one of them not only were fantastic performers in a technical sense, there was something about them was ridiculous. Something about them was, it's performance art. You look at them and, oh, they tap their foot that way, and I don't tap my foot that way, but that's interesting. I'm gonna watch that, but also listen to the music in doing that. In doing so, I mean, I just, there's so many examples throughout history that's just like, it is truly a performance art. And I think we get into the 80s, you get a few light show things that are kind of like, okay, you're sacrificing music just for kind of a sort of spectacle situation. Even so, even some of Elton John's,
I mean, even now,
are a little, right. But nonetheless, I still think that the concept of performance art it's very vital. No one wants to go and this was kind of, not that this was Miles Davis's downfall, but he wasn't exactly a very active performer. He didn't move around a whole bunch. He didn't, there was nothing particularly fancy about how he performed. But even him, okay, what was so impressive about, like, let's say 70s Miles? He had 2 keyboards. He had this huge drum set in the middle. He had, there was lights and smoke, and he had these, ornate outfits that he would wear. Even, and this is Miles Davis we're talking about here, and this is basically performance acts straight out of the Freddie Mercury songbook, or whatever you want to call it, out of the manual of performing. So I think that has affected every genre, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Wow. That's
so cool to hear.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Like, there's a lot of things that I didn't even think about, just the way that you phrase it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I did get a couple degrees.
Thought about a couple things. It's like I wouldn't have learned that. So
no, I'm just teasing. No.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what do you okay, from high school, 2012 to 2020. No, you graduated 2013. 2013 to maybe like 2020.
Yeah.
How have you seen yourself grow and develop as a creator, but just also as Tim, Like, I'm just curious to know, like, how much you've grown,
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways. Well, because, I grew up in a town with, 220 people in it. So moving to LA was kind of a big jump, to say the least. Even, I technically I live in Northridge. So it's LA County, but it's not downtown. You know what I mean? Even that move was, it is different. But nonetheless, just even Northridge compared to where I grew up, it's like I definitely felt like the country bumpkin in this sort of fast-paced, like, So a lot of things changed. A lot of things changed for me. I had to adapt to a lot of different things. My social skills had to improve. I think the two are completely interconnected, like learning in a lot of ways. And you can, it's really funny, like when you get to know somebody and then you see them play music, and especially if they're improvising, you can kind of be like, you talk like that. Like your sentence is that way. Like which again, you don't really find that in classical music so much, but in jazz, it's because these improvised lines, it's the same as this conversation right now. It's I'm doing this thing, I'm talking, I'm making this sound. Same thing with a saxophone. The only difference is I don't have a quartet behind me or something like that. So I think in learning how to socialize more appropriately for myself, I learned how to improvise more appropriately for myself.
Dang, that's deep.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so deep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think
that is very, very interesting.
Well, what can I say?
And is it weird having, like, you have students now, or like, people?
Yeah,
you have
I do
students
not. I don't teach. That's the way I look at it. I got performance degrees because I love performing. I compose because I've taken a variety of private lessons. I've done a ton of independent study with individuals to learn how to compose. Not once did I take an education course. Not once did I, in any way, study education. I don't think it's my place personally to give lessons. A lot of people probably disagree with me on that. I know there's tons of performers that teach full studios constantly. I guess just for me, it seems a little disingenuous, especially coming from a family of educators. Both my folks taught. I'm kind of like, they both spent a lot of time learning how to teach.
Yeah.
It seems wrong to me in some ways to be like, oh, I know what I'm doing, I'm just gonna go teach. It's like it's a little that belittles the art of education, in my opinion. Not to say that every artist or every performer that teaches is belittling the art of education. That's how it would feel to me if I were to do it.
Yeah. So. Wow. I think we both have teachers for parents, and I've always been like, I need to have a passion, a love, a dedication to teach others in that type of way. And I'm like, I don't think I'm there. So I'm like, I'm just not going to touch it. And other people just feel like teaching is something that just anybody can do. And it's just like, no, it's not.
It's so much work. It's so much more work, I think, that people realize too.
And that, and see, and that's again, for me, the fallacy in thinking that, oh, I study performance in school, I can teach, right? No, you can't, because you see, it's such a profound act to teach somebody something. That if you if you mess it up, if you mess it up, it can be truly detrimental to someone's development, and it's not an easy task. People spend their whole lives learning how to educate properly, and it's like I said, I don't want to do the art of education a disservice in not studying that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think like everyone has like these master classes from people that have done it, and I guess I personally am like, it's good to know how someone else has done something, but I feel like they leave a lot of spaces, a lot of things out. And they're like, oh yeah, you can just do this with hard work and dedication. And like, no, this is a daily.
It's only part of it.
So like, why are you trying to sell the dream? Like, anyone can do this.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like, unfortunately, those kinds of master classes end up being more of a motivational thing rather than an actual, like, nuts and bolts, here's data and information. And I think education is probably a combination of both of those things. You want to inspire and you want to, inform, but those master classes tend to be more inspire rather than inform, in my experience. I've been to a lot of master classes. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was fortunate, especially being in LA. Cal State Northridge is pretty connected with a lot of people. So it was pretty much like every other week there was some big name artist came through, and we got to listen to them talk. It was pretty dope.
That's cool.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was.
That's.
Yeah. Well, I want to know, how much have you learned from life experiences?
Well, a lot. I think every interaction there's something to learn from. And as I think kind of a common thread in some of the things I've been saying, it's that my creative process and the music and the art that I make is directly connected to my living experience as a human being. And so I think that every experience I have truly affects the art, whether it be a song comes out of it or just how I inflect a certain note or something that's like, this certain situation, this conversation I had made me feel this way. So now that's an emotional tool in my toolbox that I can use, whether it be through writing, performing, the kind of the possibilities are endless. So I think in that regard, almost exclusively, life always affects everything I do. in terms of like world experience, in the sense of like who I've played with and stuff. I've gotten to play with some cool guys. I haven't had a situation that's just, completely head in the clouds. I haven't had that situation yet, fortunately. But it seems to me that all these profound performers, they get the human part too. Which I think that's been very inspiring to me. To just kind of do that as best I can.
Ashe, I don't know. I feel like I'm like.
Yeah, I want to know, how do you choose a project? Because I'm kind of seeing in my life too, like there's projects that come your way or collaborations and stuff, but how do you, I guess, know that it's right for you and not just saying yes to any and every project?
Sure. Well, it depends on the kind of project, I think. So for example, for like I'll get called to record for like movies or things like that, or like TV shows. I'm not a big name, but I get a call every now and again.
You're doing your
so
thing.
in situations like, say that again. What was that?
I say you're doing your thing though. Like you're doing what you're doing. You.
I'm trying. But so like for a situation like that, when I get called for a session, it's almost always yes. Like that's just my response. Because usually in those situations, it's just it's not a lot of creativity, and not to say that makes it sound so sterile, but you go into the studio and you record the music they put in front of you most of the time. And so for me, that's less emotionally connected than if I were to improvise in the studio or something like that. So in situations like that, where it's like someone's just calling me in to read a chart or something like that, I always say yes, 100% of the time, no matter what, just because that's another thing to put in on the resume, another thing to say to somebody, hey, I worked with this fellow doing, this session. It kind of, makes me look better. But now in terms of like, if someone was hiring me to write, like to, write a song with them, or to, put a sax solo onto something, or, something like that, a little more creative, then the human element really comes into play. It's like I have to get along with that person. We have to know on some level how each one works. And if we don't, there has to be an openness between the collaborators, like myself and the other person, because I think without that, then both of us are just kind of wasting our time if we don't understand where we come from. I think that's been kind of the greatest treat of working with, the people I work with currently. I know them very, very personally, and they know me as well. And there's a lot of shared history that sort of allows us to, when I say, I want it to sound like this, they understand what this is. Whereas a stranger might not understand what this is because they've never heard that, So I guess that's how I would say it. Like in the more, for lack of a better term, like professional situation where like I'm called in kind of as a hired gun rather than a creative, I always take those gigs. I always take the hired gun gigs. When I'm called in as a creative, then that's where kind of a little more discretion, or I'm just a little more careful about how I get into those situations, just because, you can also really ruin some relationships in those situations. Whereas the hired gun thing, pretty much you just go in, you do your job, you get out. There's not a lot of buddy stuff in there. Whereas the creative thing, you can burn some bridges if you're not careful. So
that's so important how you put, how you talked about the two, because it sounds so balanced. And I don't think, I don't even know if I would even think that way coming into music like that. That's really, really, really interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
And I don't think how many of us even know. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No. Well, I was just saying, LA is Studio City. It's that's part of the game here is, there's the hired gun side and there's creative side. That's I think what separates West Coast music from East Coast in a lot of ways, is a lot of guys out here have session experience, probably more than they do creative experience. Whereas you get to New York and a lot of guys have a lot more creative experience and a lot less, session experience. So kind of part of the balance of all of it.
feel like you're giving us the tea. This is tea. Like, I had no idea. Or do you have any other tea? Like maybe some other insider stuff that somebody on the outside wouldn't know about?
And I mean, just know people. That's, it's kind of the name of the game, especially in LA. For that reason, like, because the more people you know, the more likely as a hired gun you're going to get hired. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more within my friend group, people kind of marketing is too general of a term, but kind of taking their creative presence and turning it into a hired gun scenario. Like, I'm a creative, now you can hire me to create for you, if that makes sense. So like for example, like a couple buddies of mine live in a house down the road, and one of them's a music supervisor. So he basically a show wants a song, and so he gets to sift through these songs and say, okay, here are some songs that you have, if you pay X amount of dollars, you get the legal rights to use in your movie or in your TV show or commercial or whatever. So he's using his creative expertise to sort of apply that to a greater audience. Another buddy of mine is a songwriter. He writes songs that are then put into movies and commercials and things like that. Again, using his creative expertise to kind of hire out to people that need that kind of material. So
that's cool.
It's a balance of the two. They're blending for sure. Especially as people become more specific with what they want in life. Like, I feel like the globalized world has sort of kind of taken out the ignorance, or taken out the sort of, oh, I don't know. Because yes, you do. You have the internet in your pocket. You can figure it out, like right now, if you really needed to, So people are a lot more specific now. And so people are kind of capitalizing on that in some ways, which is cool.
Yeah. So it's like you have to find your niche of what you want to focus on.
Absolutely.
There's so many options, especially if you're in LA, to just do
LA,
or even New York, just like a capital of entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even places like Nashville they have a lot of stuff going on there too, which is cool.
Nashville, yeah. I'm glad you brought up Nashville. I think, wow, that's so crazy. I think Nashville doesn't get talked about a lot at all, but it's probably one of the first cities we should talk about when it comes to music. That's crazy.
Sure. Or we shouldn't.
Crazy.
And, keep people out of there so we can keep the rent low. That's
right. Like a little known secret.
Okay.
No, I'm just teasing.
Okay.
But I know a fair amount of people that move to Nashville instead of New York or Los Angeles, just because you can afford to live there. It's a lot easier. Cost of living is so much lower. But
I mean, all the tea. All the tea.
I mean, could you talk about the environment of LA, just maybe like outside of the creative aspect, just living there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obviously very diverse. Like, even when I was in school, I mean, I was in a salsa band. I was in a Persian pop band. I was in a punk band.
What?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it just being in this city for any amount of time, you start to run into these social circles of, I can't, man, a Persian party. Y'all ever been to a Persian party? That's insane.
No.
These people throw tens of thousands of dollars into one evening, and it's some of the most extravagant stuff you'd ever see. And I certainly would not have gotten that experience had I stayed in Sacramento, or had I gone to a smaller city. Maybe even Nashville. I don't know. I've heard good things about Nashville, but I don't know about culturally if it's as diverse as the coasts, for sure. So I think that's been a big thing for me, and kind of why I came back to LA after Indiana. For me anyway, it was sort of Indiana was cool. I'm really glad I did it. Really glad I was there, and I got to experience living in the middle of the country for a couple years. Glad to be back. That's for sure. Especially being
ancestry there.
Say that again.
Do you have any ancestry tied there?
I do. My mom's side is from Indiana, from northern Indiana. I didn't really see much of them when I was out there, but I knew they were there. And
Yeah,
I think
college takes a lot of time.
yeah, they like came to my recital and stuff, and it was cool. It was good to see them. I hadn't seen
Aw,
them since I was like 6
that's
years old.
cool.
Yeah, but yeah, no,
That's
yeah.
really cool.
So she's from there. I think my pops is from Ohio, so and that's the the bordering state. So
Okay.
yeah, so yeah,
Okay.
they're Midwesterners.
That's
But
good.
being born in California, I think in some ways, sort of like I mean, like my folks traveled a lot when I was growing up, just in the summers. They'd June 1st would hit, we'd pack up the travel trailer and we'd be gone for 4 weeks at a time, just road tripping across the country. So by the time I
I didn't
was,
know that. I didn't know you
oh
did that.
yeah, no, so that was a big part of growing up for my whole family, my brother and I. Like,
Wow.
yeah, the summers would hit, and my folks didn't spend a whole lot of money during the year, and that was just so when the summers hit, there was like this travel fund, and we just, we went, we did it. But so basically, by the time I was 20, by the time I was 20, I had set foot in all 50 states. So it's like I had been to Indiana, I had seen it, but like living in that part of the world was very different than living in California. So yeah,
I feel you. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just different.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I did it, especially as politics become more and more, I think, a part of everyone's lives in this time. I think understanding people that live in other parts of the country, it's important. Maybe if not to change your political views, but it's just important to know that they're there and they're voting too. You know what I mean? And they're out there doing what they believe.
Wow, that's deep too.
So yeah, so I think that was important to me, because I think if you stay in California your whole life, you can kind of become desensitized, if that makes sense, just because it's such a liberal state. Even the conservatives in California are liberal compared to some conservatives in the middle of the country.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So, yeah, so kind of breaking that bubble was important for me, for my kind of worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, dang.
Okay.
If you can hit us with the projects.
Oh, sure.
Where can you find your website? All that good stuff.
I'm still building a website, believe it or not.
Okay.
You guys remember Hanan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So he is. Yeah, he's into digital marketing, I think, or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, he's building my website. So.
Yo, that's fly. That's fly.
I'll have to call him one of these days. I dropped the ball on that for sure. But anyway, no projects I'm in. So again, being in LA kind of exposes you to some stuff, which is cool. But so I'm in a sort of a collective called App 232, like Apartment 232. It's a lo-fi study beat project.
Okay.
That has been relatively successful. We got a minor record deal, or just like distribution deal. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. So that's been a big one. App 232. We have a new EP coming out, hopefully in December, I think was the goal. Or no, I'm sorry, September. So it's coming out sooner rather than later. So yeah, so that'll be coming out. I have my trio. It's a post-industrialist trio called the Bad Portraits. That's kind of my brainchild. It's sort of something I came up with, and I'm in it with another old roommate of mine and one of my best friends from college. We got together, and basically post-industrialism, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the concept as it relates to like economies or societies. Or, basically what it is, it's in terms of economy, there's 3 tiers. The first tier is agriculture, second is manufacturing, and third is kind of that's post-industrialism. It's basically it's marketing. It's what you know. You're paid for the knowledge in your head and how you can apply that to things, rather than your ability to grow or your ability to build things, as the first 2 tiers would pay you for. Wow. A lot of like Western European countries have kind of already gone this way. They're not growing as much as they used to. They're not manufacturing as much as they used to. And if they are, machines are doing it, a lot of it. So kind of this post-industrialist ideal is kind of taking over a lot of Western nations. The United States, we're getting there. It's just we outsource a lot of those 2 things. So we just haven't really seen the full sort of development of that ideology. Basically, I've taken that and kind of applied it to music in the sense that all three of us, the members of the Bad Portraits, we've studied a variety of musics, not just jazz, not just, salsa, not just, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of applying that sort of varied skill set to this ensemble. And I guess the reason I call it post-industrialism is because in at least economically, post-industrialism, you're paid for your knowledge, you're paid for your ability to sort of adapt and mold things together. And that's what the Bad Portraits is about. We're about taking concepts and putting them together in ways that maybe people haven't thought of or have yet to think of. So those are the two big ones for me right now. I also, like I said, I have my own private, just Tim Kreis as an artist that I'm always writing songs. I'm always, doing stuff. But those have been the big ones, especially in quarantine, the big ones that have kind of been taking my focus.
Yeah, I listened to the single. I don't know how to say the name, but I looked it up, and I just can you talk about the meaning of it and tell us how to say it?
Yeah, Vesica Piscis.
Okay.
So it's like Jessica, but with a V, and then
Pisces.
Pisces. Kind of like Pisces, but it's Piscis. So Vesica.
Pisces, like the two circles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like sacred geometry.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll let you explain it.
No, it is sacred geometry. That's a very good way to put it. That's where it started. The concept has since been adapted to a lot of Judeo-Christian religions. Frequently, when you see images of the Virgin Mary or even Jesus Christ, he will be enveloped or she will be enveloped in a kind of oval shape around them. And that's the center of the sort of, a Venn diagram, right? Mm-hmm. So the Venn, that's the Venn of a Venn diagram. And so you'll see the Virgin Mary or Jesus Christ in the middle of that, because in sacred Judeo-Christian religions, that symbol signifies the coming together of the mortal and the divine. And so that's why Jesus is put in there. That's why the Virgin Mary. So that song, I'm not religious. However, I think that every human being has something sacred in them. I do think we are all divine in our own ways. And I think, because at least to me, it seems odd that we would be the only life forms that we can find. So there's got to be something that's, I don't know if it's God, I don't know if it's anything like that, but it's definitely something to cherish and to worship it within yourself, the fact that you're living, that you're a sentient being. And so that's what the song's kind of about for me. It's about getting in touch with that part of you that is divine. And kind of maybe even balancing that.
That's
balancing
beautiful.
That with the
fact that it is really beautiful. I love knowing the reason and the meaning behind it, because it just, I feel like it amplifies it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm definitely, I'm what they call a title first composer. So if I don't it's like I write the title first before I write the song or anything, because I guess for me it seems kind of it's like that, like writing an essay without a topic sentence. That's the same thing. Like writing a song without a title, to me, it's like, what are you writing about? What's the point? So yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah.
This is so cool. I'm super excited to listen to Vesica Pisces. Did I say it right? I keep saying Pisces. Wait.
Okay.
Say it for us again.
Vesica
Pisces. I don't know why I keep saying Pisces. Vesica Pisces.
I'm gonna let him say it because I don't want to.
No, it's okay. It's I think it's Latin, so you're fine. It's a old language.
So. Okay. Cool. And is there anything else you want your audience to know? If they want to follow you on your Instagram or anything
sure,
that?
Yeah. Instagram, it's so the Bad Portraits, it's the Bad Portraits Music. Tim Kreis is Tim Kreis Music, and apt232 is APT.232. You can find any updates on music there. And like I said, a Tim Kreis website will be up eventually, and then
out for it. Yeah.
Please update us when you get the website.
I will.
And we'll go ahead and we'll let people know too.
Right on. Right on.
And
yeah.
talk about current things that have been going on, like with COVID and Black Lives Matter,
Sure.
and
Gosh,
how they're perceived in the world.
Yeah.
Would you want to speak a little bit on?
Sure. I mean, at least everyone in my social circle is. We were all at the protests in LA as much as we could. You know, every musical experience I've had has been enriched or given to me directly because of people of color. And I think I would be remiss in saying that, you know, in not saying that BIPOC are absolutely vital to music, to the music industry, and to myself individually. And yeah, obviously things need to change. Let's do it. You know, I mean, like I said earlier, understanding kind of how people in the middle of the country vote is important. Understanding how you can change that, or how you can change maybe to help them change, or, you know, our vote, unless you got a bunch of money saved up somewhere, your vote is your most powerful tool. So that's my opinion. Get out there, you know, sign the petitions, do the protests, donate if you can. Vesica Pisces, if you do stream it, I think, I forgot the exact percentage, but I think more than 30% of it goes to the NAACP Defense Fund. So and like a lot of people are doing things like that and trying to do their best to help, because I think a lot of people understand that, you know, Black lives do matter, obviously. And the music we listen to today would not be the same without Black lives. And I think that's what at least musical artists are trying to draw attention to, the fact that, you know, pop music wouldn't be pop music without Michael Jackson, frankly. You know, pop music wouldn't be pop music without Aretha Franklin. Pop music wouldn't be pop music without, you know, James Brown. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's important. It's important for people to dive into that. In terms of the political climate, you know, Donald Trump is a stain on society, in my opinion. I don't mean that, you know, I don't mean to threaten the president of the United States, but I do not agree with a lot of things that he's said and done, just on a purely moral standpoint. Economy, politics aside, just morality, it's very flawed, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what I would have to say on that. For anyone listening, yeah, vote, get registered, get out there, make a change. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. Those are major.
Wow.
I think just going off of the few people that we talked to previously, I guess like their standpoint was a lot of people talking about like white advocacy, and they're just like, so a lot of Black people feel like they don't know how to reach out to people from different cultures and communities. And I feel like that's detrimental, because we all are Americans first. I feel like that should be our first viewpoint of ourselves, just from also like international point of view. If you go somewhere else, they're going to see you as American. So I guess for you, like as presenting as a white male, how would you want like other people to basically include you in the conversation of
what conversation?
The conversation of like how we can progress our country.
Oh, well, okay, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, tell me, let me know, put the information into my lap, put it right in front of my face, show me what, you know, that. So I think first and foremost that, you know. Okay. Secondly, there is an element of holding oneself accountable. I you know, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, my parents are educated. I grew up reading a lot. I've set foot in more museums than probably the average person. I would venture. So I had a very interesting conversation with my dad not too long ago, where I was talking about, a lot of people were posting online about how whitewashed curriculum is, which is absolutely right. And he agreed with me. I mean, he's a mathematics professor or teacher, so he didn't, there's not a lot of racial bias in math.
Yeah.
Frankly. But in terms of history, in terms of literature, a lot of people were talking about how, these things have kind of been warped and skewed to the white perspective. And I was telling him I was having trouble, honestly, remembering what I read in textbooks in high school or middle school, because a lot of these places, like when students read about Gettysburg and they, the book talks about it, you get an image in your head maybe or something like that. But I rode horses over the battlefield of Gettysburg. Like, I was there. I listened to people talk, like legitimate professionals talk about the Battle of Gettysburg. And so I was telling him I was having trouble differentiating between what I learned in the book and what I learned when I was there. And so when people are posting these things about how whitewashed history was, I guess for me, not that I'd never thought about it. I knew that was the case. And I just kind of just assumed that, like, yeah, some white guy made this book, so of course he's going to make it seem like white people aren't terrible. So that was a very interesting thing for me. So you're talking about what to do, what I would want, how I would want to be included. That's that's the starting point right there. Change the textbooks, make it so that people don't actually have to go to Gettysburg to understand what happened there. Make it so that people don't have to go to Montgomery, Alabama to understand what happened there. And certainly stop painting Dr. King as this extreme pacifist, because the fact of the matter is he knew precisely what was going to happen to those people that were marching. He knew violence was going to happen. He was just trying to make sure they didn't start it. It was a PR stunt in a lot of ways, and fortunately it worked. I mean this in the most respectful way possible. I'm not.
No, like I get it.
That is PR, so I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, you want the image of what you're doing. Yeah.
So I guess So education. It's a good start. Put it in people's face. It's going to be hard because a lot of these textbook companies are centered in the middle of the country, and it's just a matter of getting the finances to back a change like that. In my opinion, if there's any way I can help, let me know. That's that's how I feel as an individual. But I feel like if you want nationwide change, it starts with rewriting the textbooks in a factual way.
Yeah, the way that we learn about our country is a big thing. So
absolutely,
the first step, because that's how you learn about self from others. So
yeah, and I think the point you made earlier, you're absolutely right. We are all Americans at the end of the day. Although I think citizens of the United States is preferred, because there are some factions and people
because
that live in South America that would rather the United States stop using America as its abbreviation. But as citizens of the United States, I think it's that should be our first and foremost thing. And I think the fact that, again, going back to what I was talking about, living in Indiana, it's a lot of white people, a lot of comfortable white people. So when they see this sort of what's a better violent is the first word, but I meant like violent revolution, more of a louder revolution. For them, it's unsettling. So, which is good, because now they're unsettled. How do we further this change in a very practical and real way? Because there's only so much that yelling and shouting is going to do. And I think that in terms of the BLM movement, that's been done. It's there. That's great. It's awesome. People are paying attention now. News cycles were running the George Floyd story for weeks on end. Now we need to find somebody to...
Wow.
Huh? She can't...
I was just saying, wow.
So she didn't know.
Yeah. And so now that we've gotten the initial sort of, look, everyone's looking, now we need to get the financial backing to make long-lasting change.
Thank you.
It
takes time.
Yeah.
I think that's been my biggest conversational piece. I'm like, okay, we've talked about it, people know, but what are we gonna physically actively do, because just saying this is wrong is like everyone knows that, but well, maybe not everyone, but at least like like everyone knows like why we're doing what we're doing and saying what we're saying. So it's like, okay, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And I think that also we wanted to do this podcast before, but with everything that came out afterwards, just inspired me to continue.
Yeah, and you should. It's important that people hear these things, because you tell somebody the same story enough times, eventually they'll understand. Same reason why people have a less negative view of slavery, of the Jim Crow era. I mean, it's because you tell a story a certain way for so long, people are going to start, oh, well, it wasn't that bad, was it? Yes, it was. It really was. There's a fantastic, if you guys or anyone listening gets a chance to go to Alabama, the Peace and Justice Memorial. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I don't know if I went when I was really young.
Okay. It's a relatively new museum and monument for all the undocumented lynchings in the South.
Wow.
It's first off just a fantastic memorial, but they have a wonderful museum attached to it as well that every white person needs to go there. So if you're white listening to this, you need to check it out. I have very liberal parents. In one of our vacations, I asked if we could go there because to me it was a new thing. I was like, hey, we should check this out. We went to the Civil Rights Museum. I believe that's in DC, which is also fantastic, but that's a little older. It's a little more codified, if that makes sense. It's not quite as fresh. This thing's relative. I think it came out in, I want to say 2014 or 2015. Pretty new. Anyway, so we went there, and like I said, my folks.
2014, 2015 in Alabama.
Yeah, I believe it's in Montgomery, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like I was saying, like my folks are very liberal, but just going there, it just kind of, I think it opened their eyes. This is even back then. This is in 2015, opening their eyes to the sort of present day Black experience in the United States, and obviously it affected me as well. But I guess what I'm saying is that if older people get out there, I think they'll be moved in a positive way. So that would be my another addition. If people get a chance to get out there, it's worth it. It's worth the time. It's worth the money. It's fantastic. Very well done.
I'm gonna check that out.
Wow. Thank you for putting that into our awareness and for having the courage to even speak on these things, because and it's wow. I honestly haven't talked to, I think, any of my white friends about this stuff. So, and I'm trying to even remember, wow. Like, I think I segregated myself so much that I don't even know what the point of view is in the white communities anymore also. Sure. And I know African Americans who, like, we don't even know because they're just we're so in our communities as well. So I think this is just really good, just information for everybody on both sides too. Sure. And just to see different perspectives and kind of see how Californians are too, because not everybody from California is going to see this. So yeah. So that's thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's seriously the least I could do. I try to remind myself of my privilege every day, and try to, even if it's something small, do something to help, because it's important. I will never fear for my life if I want to go jog in the park down the street. You know what I mean? I will never fear for my life when I get pulled over by a cop for speeding. And I think it's important for white people to understand that these are things that maybe you don't think about. I certainly didn't until recent events. So, it's important. And so it's the least I can do to speak out and hopefully influence any of your listeners that it's important to do stuff. It's important to be thinking about it.
Yeah. Thank you, for sure. Yeah. Wow. I'm currently road tripping. So I just went through Utah Idaho.
Yeah.
Everyone is just so nice.
Mm.
I think sometimes you just come with them with just like anger for something that they have no idea about.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
part of their life. I feel like that's the wrong approach, but I feel like education and just conversation helps.
It's it's a sad truth, but money's got to be behind it. You got to have financial backing to change these things. It's very interesting. Like in this current point in time, I see a lot of people posting on Facebook and Twitter talking about how they want to vote for a third party for this upcoming election. I can't say that I disagree. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of either candidate. However, the fact remains that the DNC, they have a storefront, they have a headquarters, they have a payroll, they have employees. The RNC has a storefront, they have a they have a payroll, they have employees. If we are going to truly get a third party candidate to be truly considered in this country, money,
payroll.
Do you think it's kind of up to our generation to maybe put that into effect? Because I think a lot of us are the people that aren't voting, but we have the biggest pool.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, so I think I read a statistic. It said something to the effect of like 44% of all college educated people are registered independents. And
wow,
as you know, the millennial generation is the most college educated generation in history.
Right.
So to me, what that's saying is, there's a bunch of millennials that are registered independents, which means in states like California, they cannot vote in the Democratic primary, which is why I think because there was poll after poll showing Bernie Sanders as leading the pack in the Democratic primary. But you see, when it came down to voting, young people didn't turn out. That was what people said. The only logical solution in my mind is that too many young people are registered as independents, so they couldn't vote in the Democratic primary.
Yeah.
So again, you got to get out and vote. You got to make sure you're registered properly. You got to make sure that all these things happen. And if you want a third party, then let's start making true change to that system. And it starts with money. It's just like building a business. You gotta, there's no way you're going to be able to compete with the DNC and the RNC unless you have money, unless you have resources, unless you have the same things that they have. You can't play the same game if you don't have the same equipment.
Yep.
So I think that's just in terms of that. I mean, 'cause yeah, obviously I would have personally, on a personal note, I would have loved to have seen Bernie Sanders in the White House this coming election. But the fact of the matter is, it didn't happen. And so, until we get money, until we do these things, it's just not. And I think a lot of people agree with that sentiment. A lot of people want a third party. A lot of people are tired of the same red, blue back and forth that we've been having since 1964, honestly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if we want change, it's got to start there. And I think there's a lot of, in terms of how to get that money, I think there's a lot of artists, like big names, that would be more than willing to contribute to a third party, to an independent party, whatever you want to call it. There's artists that are willing to donate that money to start it up. You got to talk to them. I mean, even Bill Gates, for crying out loud, is very liberal. Let's talk to that guy. Let's get some money in on this. I guess it just comes down to who's going to take the time to do that.
Yeah, it has to be a focus. Yeah. Because it affects us, who puts in our policies and runs our government. So, and a lot of people just feel like, oh, it's not. I'm not thinking about it. I mean, the fact that people register and think they can vote, and they don't realize that you're not, like, there's certain, like, primaries that you're not gonna be able to vote in, so you have no say. So just education on that piece, like how that works.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to go too much into it.
No, for sure. It's but no, I mean, it's important. It is, and sadly, I don't think if we did talk about that in government class in high school, I don't remember, frankly.
Yeah, I know. I know we had government together, and I just slept. So.
Yeah. And that's the sad part. It's like without.
We watched West Wing, so I'll cut this out of the video.
No. But no, it's a sad truth that, public education doesn't inform you well enough to be able to know these things. Like, for example, I think this is recently I've been dubbing myself a California supremacist. Because frankly, I think California has some of the best policies. Yeah. California has some of the best policies in the country. Not just in terms of legislation, but in terms of, how every time we vote, propositions are put on the ballot. Those propositions come from the citizens of California that they have to get 8% of the voting populace's signature. Then a proposition can be put on the ballot and people can vote on it. That is fantastic to me. What a better way of democracy than going around and saying, hey, I just need 8% of y'all's votes and I want this thing to be enacted. Okay, let's do it. That's great. That's how we get things done. I think if our federal government had some kind of policy like that, I think the people would be a lot happier with its performance than they currently are, or have. So I think California is great in that regard. I also think California is great because we, produce 85% of the nation's vegetables, or just produce in general.
People think about, but most of our state is agriculture.
People forget.
Yeah, they do. They really do. I mean, California, we bring that in. I mean, we've led the world in medical science. We've led the world in technology. I mean, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all these socials they're located in Palo Alto.
Right.
I mean, and not to mention the arts industry. I know New York and Nashville are up there, but LA is up there as well. So it's like, just add that to the, to the receipt of things that this country really takes from the state. And so I guess what I'm tying this into is I'm now excited because Kamala Harris is on the ticket. I wasn't excited about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
When Kamala Harris was added, I immediately became excited about this upcoming election because a liberal from California has never been in the executive branch in terms of,
you're seeing it from that point of view. Yeah.
California liberals have not been accurately represented in the federal government, in my opinion, for a long time. And Kamala Harris, while she's not as liberal as I want her to be, she's born and raised in Oakland. She believes a lot of the things I believe, and she knows how California works. Our state for far too long has been, oh, you're just the blue state. You're the big blue blob on the West Coast. You're going to do whatever the Democratic committee says you're going to do. This might be a chance for California to really, to let the world know, like, hey, not to be a jerk about it, but like, we provide all these things to you. Maybe you should listen to what we have to say politically because we're kind of important. That's just the way I'm looking at it, so yeah. If that excites any of your listeners to go out and vote, please vote.
Yeah, no,
California is great. I think Kamala Harris is going to do a good thing. So,
what do you say when people kind of focus on her time as a DA and they just put all of their thought process into that and not her entire political career?
Sure. A lot of valid criticisms, a lot of very valid criticisms. What I will say is that California, again, as I mentioned before, as a citizen of this state, we have a lot of power in terms of what laws are implemented and how they are governed. So if she was implementing laws, they were probably enacted by citizens of this state. And so that's what I'm saying. I don't think it was necessarily her intention to be like, oh, I'm implementing this, I'm doing this because I believe it. It's I'm doing this because this is how I interpret these laws and how these things have been, have been voted in by the citizens, a lot of them, So like I said, I'm not trying to advocate. She's done some stuff that I do not agree with. But that being said, we can change things as California citizens. 8% of the vote, then the whole state can vote on it. It's a fantastic concept. This is the ballot initiative. That whole idea is Californians have a lot of control over what our laws are, and I think that is a great thing that should be adapted to the federal government.
You are definitely educating me because when's the last time I really lived in Cali? I don't know, but like that changes the game. Just that little piece of information.
Yeah.
That changes.
Again, going back to the education we were talking about, I didn't learn about that in government.
Yeah.
I learned about that from talking to my dad because,
Wow.
Yeah. As I'm, becoming more of an active voter, I think I didn't understand any of the propositions that are on the bill this time around. I really didn't. I was like, oh God, I haven't heard of any of these things. I don't have cable in my house. We watch Netflix, we watch streaming services. I don't get commercials for ads. You know what I mean? I don't really see a lot of stuff like that.
Hey.
So how am I going to learn about these propositions that I need to vote on? Well, so I talked to my pops, like, because he still has cable. He's pretty in touch with the teachers union, like, and they tend to be pretty fair about stuff like that. And so he was talking to me about it. He sent me articles that I could read and educate myself. And it was kind of through that I realized, like, wait, how do these propositions get on the bill? Why do I not see these same kind of things to vote on when I'm voting for federal elections? And I started to realize, this is because in California, we have this thing called the ballot initiative that, some states have, not a whole lot, but hopefully it becomes more popular with Kamala Harris in the White House. So that's why I'm excited about it. I'm just, California's biggest contributions to the White House have been Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. So it's pretty depressing to look at it that way, frankly. So I'm looking forward to changing our effect on the executive branch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like I said, I am proud to be from California. I really am.
Me too. Yeah.
It's like I said, I don't think people understand. We do things differently on the West Coast, and not always in the weirdest way that you can imagine. I feel like that's like the Hollywood version of the weird left coaster. There's some of that, but there's also a lot of very real, very dramatic change happening here, and it's cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned not, all of my opinions on these things need to be taken with that in mind, that, I am from California, and as a white person in California, I'm going to be more liberal than a white person from Indiana. And that's just a fact. You mentioned earlier about not really knowing, not talking to your white friends about, for example, Black Lives Matter, issues and concepts. My point of view and the people around me we're going to be very different than in the middle of the country. For, like I said earlier, there's a lot of white people that are comfortable. Whereas in California, if we are comfortable, we see people that aren't and try to actively change that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I think, just dropping jewels. Thank you so much. For real.
Oh, no, thanks.
Yeah, that's so good to know.